What's up YouTube? And before I start today's video, I have a question for you all. Whenever you guys move to a new place, do you ever think about the very real possibility that some anonymous individual could be watching your new house all hours of the day and night and sending you mysterious letters threatening you and your family? Well, get ready to be, because today we are going to be talking about the unsolved case of the Watcher letters. In June of 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus, along with their 3 children, were getting ready to move into a new house located at 657 Boulevard in the town of Westview, New Jersey. Maria, the wife of the family, had grown up in Westfield her entire life, with 657 Boulevard being just a few blocks from her childhood home. Derek had grown up in a working-class family in Maine and over time worked his way up the ladder at an insurance company that he worked at until he was eventually vice president and able to afford the home at 657 Boulevard for $1.3 million. Now, Derek's insurance company was located in Manhattan, but Derek had plans for the family to move to a more peaceful and quiet suburban life, which was the kind of life that Westfield was providing. Residents of Westfield, New Jersey often compared the town to that of Mayberry from the Andy Griffith Show. It was said to be one of those places where everybody would greet you with a warm smile. The town holds roughly 30,000 residents, and in 2014, Neighborhood Scout rated it the 30th safest town in America. It was said that at the time of this incident, the most pressing matters in the town weren't drugs or crime, but instead the closing down of a Trader Joe's. So hopefully that just gives you an idea into how safe and suburban this town was said to be. Derek Broaddus had bought the home just after celebrating his 40th birthday with his 3 kids, already trying to figure out which of the chimneys in the house Santa Claus was going to come down. Now, I ain't never been in a house with more than 1 chimney, so I can't imagine what that's like. Now, the Broaddus family was still in the process of getting their things moved over to the house, as well as there being renovation and construction going on at the house, meaning that the family hadn't actually moved into the house yet, and instead were staying in their old home. Still, Maria would often bring the kids over, and Derek, being an avid painter on the side, liked to paint at the new house. One night after a long evening of painting at the new house, Derek went outside to check the mail. It seemed at first there wasn't anything out of the ordinary in the mailbox, just a few bills. That was until Derek came across a mysterious white card-shaped envelope. The letter was simply addressed to the new owner in thick, clunky handwriting. Inside the envelope was a full letter that had been typed instead of written and said the following: "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades, and now as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out." The letter also gave extremely detailed information of the work being done to the house, as well as referring to Derek and Maria Broaddus' 3 children as young blood. The letter would go on to say, "Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family, or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive past 657 Boulevard every day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I'm in one. Look out any of the many windows from 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by every day. Maybe I am one. Welcome, my friends. Let the party begin." Now, earlier in the week, the Broadduses had gone around the new neighborhood that they would be moving into, introducing themselves to the new neighbors. At the same time, the children of the Broadduses, who were 5, 8, and 10 years old, ran around with other local kids in the neighborhood while the adults talked. This could be how the mysterious person who wrote the letter was able to identify the children. Now, naturally, with David being home alone and the fact that it was after 10 p.m. when he read the letter, he frantically ran around the house, locking all the doors and pulling all the blinds across all of the windows before calling the Westfield Police Department. An officer responded to the call and showed up at the house, and after reading the letter, stated, and I quote, "What the fuck is this?" And no, that little detail didn't really hold anything to the story, I just really thought it was funny. The officer asked Derek if he had any enemies, to which of course Derek responded no, and the officer suggested that Derek move a piece of construction equipment out of the backyard in case the person who wrote the letter tried to throw it through a window. After the officer left, Derek rushed over to his wife and kids at the other side of Westfield in their old home, and that very same night, Derek and Maria wrote an email to the previous owners of the house, John and Andrea Woods. In the email, the Broadduses asked the Woods if they had any idea who the Watcher was, or if they had ever gotten a letter in their time living in the house like the one that they had received. Andrea Woods would respond the next day to the email, writing that a few days before her and her husband had moved out of the house, that they had gotten a letter from the watcher stating that he had been watching the house for so long and blah blah blah. Just pretty similar stuff to the first letter that the Broadduses had already gotten. Now, although the Woodses thought that the letter was odd, they claimed that they had never gotten a letter like that in their 23 years of living in the house, and pretty much just threw the letter away without thinking much of it. Now, that's a real boss move there. I mean, they did not care at all. The next day, the Woodses went with Maria Broaddus to the Westfield police station. It was here that Detective Leonard Lugo would tell the Broadduses not to tell anybody about the letters, especially their neighbors, all of whom were now suspects. Over the course of the next couple weeks, the Broadduses would be on very high alert, with Derek even canceling a work trip, as well as Maria shouting the names of the children should they be playing out in the yard if they happened to get into a corner of the yard that Maria couldn't see them from. When Derek later gave a tour of the house's renovations to some neighbors on the block, Derek froze whenever the wife of the couple that they were showing the renovations to stopped and said, "It'll be nice to have some young blood in the neighborhood." It should also be noted that the general contractor to the construction going on at the house arrived one morning to see a heavy sign that he had hammered into the ground the night before, completely ripped out of the ground and laying in the yard. 2 weeks after the first letter, Maria stopped at the house to look at paint samples and to check the mail. In the mail, she found yet another card-shaped envelope with thick black handwriting on it. Inside was yet another mysterious letter from the watcher which said, "Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will." The letter would go on to detail things about the Broaddus' children, including but not limited to their daughter's painting hobby. Now, their daughter liked to paint on the back porch, and the police suggested that the fact that the watcher was able to detail the daughter painting on an enclosed porch in the backyard suggested that it quite possibly could have been one of their neighbors. The letter would go on to say, "657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in each bedroom. Then I can plan better. Who am I? I'm the watcher and have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you and kindly moved out when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Broaddus family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving in day. You know I will be watching." Now, it was after the second letter that the Broadduses decided to stop bringing their children to the house altogether, and they began not being sure when or even if they would move in. Now, since the Broadduses had probably already planned to be moved into the new house by this point, they had sold their old house and were staying at Maria's parents' house while the letters continued. Several weeks later, a third letter arrived. And by all accounts, I wasn't able to find anything online about what this letter said except for the sentence, "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you." Now, it was at this point in time that the investigation into the watcher letters had stalled, largely due to the fact that the watcher left no digital trail, no fingerprints, and no way to pin somebody at the scene of a crime that could have been hatched from basically any mailbox in New Jersey. 6 months later, the Broadduses began trying to sell the house, but with no luck. The fact that they weren't able to sell the house was largely due to the fact that residents in the town were saying that by this point in time, the watcher letters had already become like a thing in the town, and the people who were interested in buying the house had heard the rumors behind it, and so they started backing out of deals. The Broadduses would then consider selling the house to a developer who planned to tear down the property and split it into 2 lots, but this proposal was rejected by the Neighborhood Planning Board. Scott Krause, who helped with the investigation on behalf of the Union County Prosecutor's Office, said that trying to find the source of the watcher letters was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. So, in December of 2014, whenever the police ran out of options, Derek Broaddus showed the letters to his local priest, who came over to bless the house. After this, Derek Broaddus included in the renovations of his home an alarm system, and even put an ad out online calling for military veterans to help guard the house. Derek would respond to numerous tripped alarms at the house, but in all the times that he would go over there, nothing was ever found. It was even said that most of the alarms that were tripped during this time were tripped in the middle of the night. But the Broadduses didn't want to live in a bunker. They didn't want to live in a fortress. They wanted to live in a house. They didn't want to constantly feel like they had to look over their shoulders or look out of the windows at any given point for somebody watching them. and so the couple was seriously running out of options for what to do. Bill Woodward, who was the house's painter, said that Maria Broaddus, whenever he would come over, would often be shaking and crying because of the letters, and Maria Broaddus was later diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. And now, as the watcher letters kept coming in every so often, it seemed that with each letter, the watcher grew more and more deranged. For example, letters would contain things like, "The house is crying from all the pain it's going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It cries for the past and what it used to be when I roamed its halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard when I would run through the halls imagining the life of the rich occupants there." Now I want to stop and have you guys imagine for a second that you live in a new house. Imagine that there is somebody in the house with you that you don't even know is there and who roams the house whenever you're not home. And after the Broadduses had tried everything from posting ads for guards to trying to sell the house to anybody that would take it, and they had completely run out of options, another letter came in, this one saying, 657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my letters to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher.
All hail Plankton. What's going on here?
Maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away, maybe the mysterious death of a pet, loved ones suddenly die, planes and cars and bicycles crash, bones break, you are despised by the house, and the Watcher won. Now the Broadduses would keep bringing each letter that would come in to the police station, and after so many of them, the police were finally able to cook up something of a lead. Because of the timing of one of the letters that was sent, the police were able to draw a circle around 657 Boulevard of exactly 300 yards, suggesting that the Watcher had to have come from someone living within that circle. The Broadduses would continue to push the case, but besides that map that the police had drawn up, there wasn't much that they could do. It seemed that with all the faces that passed by the house every day, the Watcher could have quite literally have been any one of them. Neighbors of the house would sometimes make mention of a man who walked through the neighborhood every so often playing the flute, or an elderly couple who lived in a house behind 657 Boulevard and were sometimes seen sitting on their porch staring in the direction of 657 Boulevard, but nothing could ever be confirmed. Now, because nobody was able to pin down any theories, it just seemed that residents of the town would start pointing fingers at each other. And the Broadduses themselves were sometimes at the receiving ends of these fingers, saying things like they were trying to pull off an insurance scam or that they were trying to angle for a movie deal. On June the 2nd of 2015, the Broadduses would file a legal complaint against the previous owners, the Woodses, claiming that the previous owners should have disclosed the information about the letter that they had gotten before selling the house to the Broadduses. A local reporter in the area ended up finding the complaint, which turned the story into a whole media sensation. There were news trucks constantly parked outside of the house, and one reporter even camped outside of the house trying to set up his own watch looking for the Watcher.
Is it an active investigation? Are the Westfield cops still on this?
Not really.
Now, news reporters constantly being outside of the house may sound like hell for the neighbors there, but in my opinion, that's probably one of the best things that could have happened in this case. I mean, with so many eyeballs looking at every single house, every single window at all times of the day and night, it seems that the Watcher would have a pretty hard time not being discovered. But, spoiler alert, he wasn't discovered. In the spring of 2016, the Broadduses made a business out of the house, renting it out to different people. And by this point, Derek Broaddus had become so frustrated with the letters and the police response that he hired his own private investigator, which got to the exact same conclusion that the police had drawn, which was absolutely nowhere. And in July of 2019, the Broadduses were finally able to sell the house at $959,000, which was a $400,000 loss from the price that they had bought it at. The new owners have not reported any Watcher letters turning up in their mailbox, and to this day, the identity of the Watcher remains unknown. Now, a lot of theories pertaining to the Watcher's identity largely point the finger at any one of the neighbors around the house or behind the house. And it was said at one point, I think at the beginning in 2014, after their first couple letters had come in, that the Broadduses attended a block party and were scanning the crowd there for any clues as to who the Watcher could be. And it was here that a neighbor would tell Derek Broaddus about a family who lived next door to the house, who had a young adult son there, who was said to be a really weird character altogether. But if you ask me, I think it was one of their neighbors. That's the best conclusion that I can draw from this, is that it was either someone who lived next door to the house or on the same block in the same neighborhood. Now, as to why, I don't know. It could have been an elaborate prank set up by someone. It could have been someone who had some kind of grudge against the Broadduses, or someone who had lucked out on the deal on the house whenever the Woodses were selling it. But this is one of those cases that probably will never be solved. It should also be noted that Netflix Studios has come out with the Watcher TV show, which is a fictional story based on the Watcher letters, and premiered on October 13th, 2022, starring Naomi Watts and Bobby Cannavale. And with all that said, I'm going to wrap this video up. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and please leave a like and subscribe. It really does mean the most. And this is Cryptic, signing off.